Ya pemirsa, saat ini kita terhubung langsung dengan Duta Besar Amerika Serikat untuk Indonesia, periode 2014 hingga 2016. Your Excellency, Robert Blake. Hello, Ambassador Blake. It's honor to have you with us.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Apa kabar?
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Ambassador, it's election day again in the United States, and according to recent polls, it looks like both presidential candidates are neck and neck, very tight. Could you explain what is going on in the U.S. in political scene?
Certainly. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity tonight. It's great to be with you. As you said, our elections are going to be very, very tight, maybe the tightest we've had in several years. So we may not know the results for a couple of days. It really depends how accurate the polls have been. The polls show that it's very, very close between Kamala Harris and former President Trump. If it's very, very close, it's going to take several days. You may remember last time it took 4 days for the Associated Press to announce the results. So everybody in America is very, very nervous and anxious as we watch the results beginning tonight.
So in this position, in your opinion, who has the bigger chance to win this election, and what factors are influencing the result?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, everything is going to come down to what we call turnout. And as you probably know, Kamala Harris is expecting a very strong turnout from women who are very concerned about the abortion issue in the United States and maintaining access to abortion services in their states, but also just maintaining the freedom to make decisions about their own bodies. And on the Trump side, he's expecting a fairly strong turnout among men. So again, I think a lot will depend on how those turnouts really proceed. So we'll be watching that very, very closely. The other big division is, of course, there's a rural and urban divide in the United States. So, mostly the rural voters are going to vote for former President Trump. Urban areas tend to vote for the Democratic candidate, in this case, Kamala Harris. So a lot will really matter in the suburbs of these big urban areas like Atlanta, the places in all over Pennsylvania, and these 7 key swing states.
Okay, Ambassador. Now, how will the result impact the United States foreign policy? For instance, in regards to the China issue, Russia versus Ukraine, and the Middle East issue. What do you think about that?
Well, I think if Harris is elected president, you're going to see a lot of continuity in our policies, particularly our foreign policy. Continued strong support for Ukraine. I think she's going to press for a resolution to the conflict in Gaza and in Lebanon. She shares Indonesians' concerns about the heavy civilian casualties that have taken place. So I think she's going to be somebody who's going to push very hard to get some sort of settlement of that and an end to the war. I think more broadly on the Asia front, you're going to see a continued emphasis on strengthening our alliances around the world and strengthening our partnerships with countries like Indonesia. As you know, Biden made a very important step forward in establishing a strategic comprehensive partnership with Indonesia. So I think we can expect that to continue. If Trump is elected, it'll be very, very different. He doesn't have as much of a regard for our traditional alliances. You're going to see him enact fairly substantial tariffs on countries around the world. And so I think there's a real risk not only of a U.S.-China trade war getting worse, but also of just higher tariffs on all imports coming from every country, as much as 20%. So that's going to have a very significant impact on Indonesia, because, of course, you have very strong exports to the United States. So I think that former President Jokowi and now President Prabowo have been very wise to say that they're going to try to have Indonesia join CPTPP, because that will help to increase the number of markets that you can export to and you can get investments from. And I know that the trade minister has set a goal of trying to conclude your CEPA, your Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement with the European Union. I think that's a very smart move as well, because obviously if there's a trade war between your two largest trading partners, that's not going to be good for Indonesia.
Okay, talking about the relationship between America and Indonesia, if Kamala Harris become first female U.S. president, how would it impact relation between the United States and Indonesia? And what if Donald Trump wins second presidency?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think that Kamala Harris, you can count on her continuing the very strong progress that we've seen building our relations across the board with Indonesia. She's familiar with Southeast Asia. She's traveled to Southeast Asia. She knows the issues. And, you know, she's a very young and energetic person. So I think you'll see her attending the East Asia summits and all these important meetings that take place in the region. As I say, with Donald Trump, I think there's more of a risk that Indonesia needs to be aware of, and particularly these higher tariffs that he's going to impose on countries around the world, but also this U.S.-China trade war that is probably going to accelerate under Donald Trump. So there's a risk for Indonesia and other countries to become collateral damage in that particular scenario. So that's something very much you have to be aware of. Another issue I'll be watching very closely is what happens in Taiwan and the South China Sea. Hopefully, we're going to see Trump continue to reaffirm America's strong support for Taiwan and discourage any action by China against Taiwan. But he's been a little bit more cautious on that than Biden has been. So we'll watch that very carefully. I think another important issue will be critical minerals. Obviously, President Prabowo has said that he wants to continue the downstreaming policy that Indonesia started under President Jokowi. I think either the Democrats or the Republicans will want to continue to try to expand our cooperation on critical minerals with Indonesia, because both parties understand that we need to reduce our reliance on China. And so I think it's in our interest to hopefully sign a critical minerals agreement with Indonesia and help Indonesia to improve its labor and environmental standards so that it can then benefit from some of the tax incentives under the Inflation Reduction Act.
So, do you think Kamala Harris would have a better chance to maintain communication and relationship with our new president, Prabowo Subianto?
I mean, frankly, I think both presidents will make it a priority. Indonesia is such an important country now for the United States, and so I think both countries will have strong diplomatic contacts. And of course, we have our embassy there. We have our very capable ambassador there. But again, I think the main difference will be on the policy side, where we will see pretty substantial changes if Trump is reelected.
Oke, thank you Ambassador Blake for your time. Terima kasih dan terima kasih untuk waktunya, ini sebuah kesempatan yang luar biasa. Thank you Ambassador.
Thank you.